Welcome everyone to Serene Associates annual nonprofit conference. I hope all of you who attended our virtual networking session enjoyed it. I actually thought it was kind of cool. I liked it. Hopefully those who got a chance to get on it, I think it was kind of a little short in each session, but it was still good. 2023 is a big year for Serene Associates. This marks our 30th anniversary. 30 years ago, I converted my garage at my house into an office, and I officially became employee number 1 of Serene Associates. For all of you who have started your own agencies, you know how exciting and how daunting a task this can be. It got kind of really scary for me. I actually had a newborn and a 1-year-old at home, so it kind of made it even a little bit more daunting and scary. But now here we are 30 years later, and we have grown into one of the top regional accounting firms in the area. We're considered one of the top 350 firms in the country. We have over 75 employees. We cover more than 20 industries, including we have education, construction, technology, financial services, litigation support, real estate, and more. And honestly, we have all of you guys to thank for that, so we really appreciate it. And while many things have changed over the last 30 years, I think there's one constant. The nonprofit sector. The nonprofit sector has always been an important part of who we are as a firm. It's always been kind of our grounding spot. We've always been kind of rooted as a nonprofit firm in the nonprofit sector. And to put it in perspective, we currently serve more than 300 nonprofit organizations, which makes us one of the top 10 firms serving the nonprofit sector in the New York metropolitan area. But we don't just stop there. We serve actually nonprofit organizations in over a dozen states, with nonprofits, as I said, representing about 2/3 of what we do. I only bring that up because, again, this is really who we are. We actually love the nonprofit sector. It kind of resonates with my personality. Everybody always migrates to what they feel comfortable with, and I've always felt comfortable with the difference that you guys make, the magic that you guys do on a daily basis, everything that you guys accomplish for other people. And that's kind of how I've tried to build this firm to kind of mirror and emulate what you guys do in the nonprofit world. So thank you. As part of that, we've always believed that education is an important part of our responsibility in serving the sector. To that end, in addition to this conference, which we do every year, and I think we've been doing this for over 20 years, we publish the NFP Advisor, which is our newsletter that we put out for the sector. We do an annual trends report and a seminar that happens in January. So today we're going to do a little bit of an update in terms of what's happening from a trends perspective. So I'll kind of go over that with everybody. We host our monthly Serene Connection webinars, which kind of give insight, and we bring different specialists in to talk to the nonprofit sector and actually the for-profit sector too about different things that are important to them. We provide board training. We've published special guides, including how to be an effective board member, and technology guide looking at cybersecurity issues and stuff. If you haven't seen them, jump on our website, grab them. And we continue to look for additional ways that we can be a support for the nonprofit sector. So as we go through this, and even after, if anybody has any ideas or things that they'd like from us as a firm, please just let us know. We want to help. We are actually we've heard that a lot of people are still grappling with fundraising issues, so we are looking to put together a fundraising guide and some of the trends that are happening in the fundraising sector. So look for that in the fall. For those of you who have not joined the Nonprofit Resource Hub or haven't heard of the Nonprofit Resource Hub, I encourage you to become a nonprofit partner. It's free for nonprofit members. What the Nonprofit Resource Hub is it's a organization that brings together professionals that work within the nonprofit environment, and they all produce information and sessions and seminars like this. And it's really all about sharing information and sharing ideas and pushing everything out. If you look in the chat, Kelly just posted a link to the Nonprofit Resource Hub, but I definitely encourage everybody to kind of check it out. We have a great schedule for you today, which you can see up on the screen. We have 2 tracks. So after my introduction, we have room A, room B. So in room A, think of the room A more as the CFO track, where we're going to be looking at employee benefits, legal and governance updates, nonprofit accounting update. And room B is more of the CEO board track, building a stronger board, some succession planning discussion, technology, where we're looking at cyber updates and everything else. And then we're all going to come back together at about 12:20. And we've got this amazing nonprofit panel put together, and they're going to be able to answer any questions anybody has. So definitely pick and choose what you want to go to, invite other people in. The more the merrier. Again, we're here. We believe a big part of what we do is educating the sector, and that's what we want to do. Just before we get started, a couple administrative things. We are offering 4 hours of CPE for today for accountants. You are going to get an evaluation form after this with the recording. When that evaluation form comes in, please fill it out. You can't get the CPE unless we get the evaluation form back. So you will get that evaluation form with the recording of today. As I said, we'll be recording today, so everybody's going to get a copy of today's recording. This way, if there are seminars that you weren't able to go to, or you wanted to be in the same thing in track A and B, but you couldn't be in 2 places at once, you'll be able to watch that at your leisure. You can download a copy of today's handouts. There's a link in the chat, which you can kind of grab the handouts through the link in the chat, or there's also resources. You can go back and grab them from there. But in any event, enjoy today. Hopefully it's what you guys were looking for. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Do this. So again, nonprofit trend update. So we can't really have a trend update without talking a little bit about what's happening in the economy, right? Because the economy is kind of an important part of what's happening in today's environment. It was COVID, and then the government pumped a whole lot of money into the economy in order to kind of keep the economy afloat. And with all that money that the government pumped into the economy, we ended up hitting a period of inflation, right? So inflation kind of grew over the last 2 years. In 2021, the inflation was about 6.5%. In 2022, it was up to over 7%. We started this year in January with inflation of about 6.5%. And we're down in May, we were down to 4%, which is the lowest level it's been in the last 2 years. But still, when we look at over the last 20 years, we've only had, prior to the last 2 years, we've only had 1 year where inflation was over 4%. So we're still at a very high level of inflation. But again, we are, again, better than we were last year and the year before. And hopefully, the fact that the government has been hiking up interest rates, that inflation will continue to come under control. Even so, again, costs are still up. Costs are up about 15 to 20% over the last 2 to 3 years. Leading in that whole cost push are labor and labor-related costs, right? We'll talk about it today, and we talked about it in our little breakout sessions, but finding staff is probably one of the hardest things that organizations are doing. They're having a tough time attracting and retaining staff. And part of that is the money piece of it. And, nonprofits have historically paid a little less than their for-profit counterparts. There's soft benefits that people get from working for nonprofit organizations that you don't get in working for a for-profit business. So that's going to give you a little bit of an advantage. But still, the price of labor is going to continue to go up. We talked about increased interest rates. The prime rate as of this morning is 8.25%, which is up from 4.75% a year ago. So the government has been pumping up the interest rates in order to try to curb the inflation. Inflation is still higher than where the government would like to see it. So we are anticipating that there probably will be at least 1 or 2 more interest rate hikes over the course of this year to continue to bring inflation under control. So we are expecting increases of between 1/4 and 1/2% before this year is over. Again, obviously that makes borrowing more expensive in terms of borrowing against lines of credit. And that's kind of important, especially since a lot of organizations, especially those organizations here in Suffolk County, have seen a slowdown in payment cycle. And that's putting drains on cash flow. Organizations have had to go out onto their lines of credit a little bit more than in the past. And the cost of borrowing is much more expensive, which is taking away from the ability to pay for other things. One of the things that we were actually surprised when we started to do last year's audit, so I want to just make sure audits. So I just want to make sure I bring it up as we're kind of talking here, is that we saw a lot of organizations that are still getting below market interest rates on their savings or on their money markets. And the banks aren't out there necessarily, jumping in and saying, hey, we're offering this or we're offering that, or automatically switching people. So you actually have to go in and talk to the banks about getting a higher interest rate on your investments. So we do encourage you to go out and talk to your banks and find out what they have to offer, because you can get 4% or better on your investments if you're willing to or have the ability to tie it up for a year in a CD. You could even get closer to 5%. So again, something that if you're not already doing, it's something you should be looking at in terms of taking advantage of the increased interest. In terms of the stock market, it's kind of a mixed story with respect to the stock market. We are seeing a turnaround in the market for 2023, which is a plus. The S&P is up about almost 9%. But the truth of the matter is, it's really not a broad-based increase. It's really limited to certain stocks. There are 7 stocks that are actually carrying the marketplace. And if you strip out the impact of the 7 which are listed there, the S&P 500 is actually down. So, when we think about charitable giving, which is when we think about the stock market and why the stock market is important, charitable giving has historically been linked to the market. So even though the market is up a bit, it's a cautious up. And I know I actually had lunch with a financial advisor yesterday, and he was saying they're recommending to their clients that their clients just stay cautious, stay safe. And while the market is up, it's still a tenuous situation, which means then that when we look at foundations, we look at high net worth individuals who have resources that are out there donating, it's going to be a cautious donation. They're going to think before they donate. They're going to be sitting back and waiting to see where the market takes them before they kind of break open the piggy bank. So we're still going to see, even though the market's up, we're still going to see some caution in donor donations being made to nonprofit organizations. And one of the things, and I've mentioned this before in other seminars, but one of the things that organizations need to understand is that less than 50% of Americans actually give to charity. When you compare that to about 20 years ago, it was over 70% of Americans gave to charity. So there are a lot less people giving to charity. The thing that is kind of masking that is there have been much larger donations being made to the nonprofit sector. And those larger donations are really masking the fact that the less people are giving. So really, the onus is going to be on you guys to go out there and try to cultivate that middle market and next generation of donors to start generating and try to increase the interest in giving to the nonprofit sector. And I think with Gen Z, there is a tremendous level of interest to do social good. So you already have a leg up in the fact that Gen Z is very interested in the sector and interested in making a difference. They just don't have necessarily the resources, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't cultivate them for the long game. Impact on service demand. Again, it's a tale of two cities here. If you're health and welfare organizations, you're continuing to see an increase in demand, especially in areas like mental health and housing. Those are big areas. Food. Arts and educational organizations, not so much. I mean, there are less children being born. The school districts are holding on to kids, so you're seeing a lot less kids going into private schools, both because of less kids in general, and second, because of less money available. And then same with arts and culture, where there's admission fees and stuff like that. More and more people are staying home. There's a lot less people. We're seeing it open up a little bit, but not as much as it was pre-pandemic. And then overall, from a global economy perspective, we're expecting the economy to remain somewhat sluggish. The expected growth is going to be between 2 and 2.4% in 2023, and that will most likely carry over beyond 2023 too. From a New York State budget perspective, the New York State budget was passed, I guess was in April, I want to say. And the budget was $229 billion, which was about 9.2 billion less revenue in 2023-24 than it was in 2022-23. Couple reasons for that. Predominantly, there was a big loss in the COVID funding that came from the federal government. And secondly, Wall Street is off and a lot of people have moved out of New York State. So that's also having an impact. There's less tax dollars coming in from individuals. Overall, from a budget perspective, there was a large investment in school aid. You saw a 7.5% overall increase in Medicaid for certain sectors of healthcare, such as hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living. Things like early intervention on the education side got no increases. There were COLA increases of 4% pretty much across the board for human service providers, mental health, developmental disabilities, addiction services, temporary disability, children and family services, and services for the aging. Not necessarily official yet, but from the state education side for preschool and school age education, the increase is going to be 6.25%. There was $1 billion earmarked for mental health, multi-year plan for expansion of residential capacity, inpatient psychiatric capacity, and increased housing. They're looking to build 3,500 new units, expanding childcare eligibility through OCFS to make more children eligible for the services. And then obviously with the whole migrant worker issue, there's been $1 million set aside for humanitarian emergency response relief. So, you know, the budget has a lot of good things in it for the nonprofit sector, but I think, you know, some of the numbers that came out in the budget were lower than what a lot of the nonprofits were expecting. One other thing about the budget, again, we're $9.2 billion less in revenue in the current year. There is still some COVID dollars in this budget. I think we're going to see that as we move into 25, 26, 27, the budget's going to get even tighter. So, you know, organizations need to really start thinking about what they're going to be doing in terms of bringing on additional discretionary dollars into their organizations, especially if they rely heavily upon state funding, because we are, I think, going to see some tightening of budgets going forward. Government audits are still a thing. We're seeing more and more from a provider audit perspective. Pretty much every funding source is doing some level of audits. So it really becomes important for organizations to focus on documentation, making sure they're compliant, establishing quality review procedures. Go to the websites of your funders. Most of them have audit protocols on their websites. Download the audit protocols, take a look at them. If you're not already on listservs for the organizations that fund you, get on their listservs, join your trade associations, and stay abreast of what's happening within the industries. It's going to be super, super important for you to do that, because audit activity is not going to go away. It's just going to intensify. The OCFS, Office of Children and Family Services, sent out a letter earlier this month that the OSC will be performing audits of the Child Care Stabilization funding. So anybody who's in the childcare world who got any of that funding, there will be audits taking place. We don't know the extent of the audits. We don't know if everybody's getting audited. There wasn't a whole lot of guidance, just a letter. The OMIG is looking, Office of Medicaid Inspector General is looking at early intervention providers. They also just released the new Medicaid compliance self-assessment form. It's on their website. Anybody who gets Medicaid funding, especially if you get Medicaid funding over $500,000, it's in your best interest to go onto the OMIG website, find that Medicaid compliance self-assessment form. If you need it, reach out to us. We'll send you a copy of it, and have your Medicaid compliance officer go through the self-assessment form and really determine if you guys are on track with what you should be doing. And then I know a lot of you have applied for the ERTC, the Employee Retention Tax Credit. The IRS has started performing audits of it because they feel there's a high level of abuse that's taking place within the ERTC. So they are going to be doing audits of the ERTC. So again, something to just keep in mind, audits are a part of our life now, and they're going to be here for the long term. We talked a little bit about staffing and the fact that we are sitting in a situation where there's a staffing shortage. Unemployment continues to be low. It was 3.7% in May of 2023. So that's still considered a low level of unemployment. Staffing shortages are happening. The major places where we're seeing staffing shortages are the direct service providers, healthcare, education, and finance. Those are, I mean, obviously it's widespread, but those are the places where we're seeing the highest level of intensity. In talking to our clients and also through studies that we've reviewed, we're expecting salary increases for the year between 4% and 5%. So that's roughly what we're anticipating. And then, as we all know, women make up about 75% of the nonprofit sector. So flexibility becomes a very, very important issue when it comes to how to attract and retain staff. Since you're dealing with women in the workforce, there needs to be more flexibility with respect to childcare, whether that's something that you can help support, whether it's something you offer as an organization, but childcare is an important issue. During COVID, remote schooling was a big issue. I mean, that's kind of lessened now, but there's still some instances where there will still be some remote schooling that takes place. So you have to be flexible with some of that. And there's been definitely, as America ages, we're seeing a lot more in terms of caregiver needs. And no matter what, women still tend to be the primary caregivers in terms of that and making sure that their families are taken care of. So we have all of these caregiver needs that come into play. So you really need to kind of consider the fact that you are being more flexible in your ability to work with your workforce. So some of the things that I think we need to do in order to try to attract and retain staff is part of it is, you know, again, what's the value of your organization? What's the impact you're having? As I said earlier, you know, people, and you know, when we were in the breakout session, one of the people in my breakout session said, you know, he left an advertising job and went into nonprofit because he kind of felt that from a nonprofit perspective, there was a different feel and a different call. And, you know, that's still something that people are interested in. People want to make a difference. So you actually have that as a benefit. That's something that you should be stressing when you're going out there, you know, tap into that social passion that people have. People want to be part of a purpose-driven, mission-fueled, and value-aligned organization. So lean into it. Don't shy away from it. People want a flexible work environment. The more you can create a flexible work environment, the better off you're going to be. Showcase your culture. What's the culture of the organization? Social media is growing, and we'll talk about it in a little while. But showcase your culture through your platforms. Team building is super, super important. 27% of the population today is Gen Z. So our workforce is becoming more and more Gen Z, and you're going to see that as we get deeper into that Gen Z population. There's a lot more emphasis on leadership. There's a lot more emphasis on empathy. There's a lot more emphasis on social responsibility. These are things that are very, very important. Feedback, education, training. These are all things you want to kind of build into your platform as an organization and kind of push that out to your staff. And you want to kind of make sure that they understand all of that stuff is important. Increased benefits. We talked about you know, flexibility. We talked about childcare. There's continued education. There's assistance and relief with school loans. I mean, one of the benefits of being a nonprofit organization is you get the benefit of being able to help people work off their student loans. So that's something that you should be kind of talking about and selling as a benefit. There's a focus on broadening your prospective base. You can, you know, tap into that DEIA world. Tap into DEIA. You want to be in a situation where you want your staff to be representative of the people you serve. You want to be able to bring different people in from different walks of life to be able to really gain a better understanding of the people that, or provide a better understanding and a better perspective of the people that you're serving. So again, you want to try to look at building your perspective base. And again, it's something that Gen Zs are very, very big on. Provides feedback I mentioned before in soft skill training, make employees feel valued, invest in leadership, and invest in technology. There's a lot of new technology, AI, which we'll talk a little bit about further, that really has the ability to do stuff that takes some of the low kind of menial tasks away from staff and gives them the opportunity to kind of function at a higher level. I'm going to spend a bit of time today talking about fundraising. And the reason I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about fundraising is most of the other topics, staffing, cybersecurity, AI, and all that stuff is all going to be covered under different sessions today. We actually don't have someone talking about fundraising today. So because we don't have someone talking about fundraising, I'm going to cover a little bit of some of the fundraising trends that are out there and kind of go from there. So it's important, and we've talk about this every year, but it's important to diversify your funding streams. So the expectation is that grants are going to be down. We're expecting that there'll be fewer grants. Grants are going to be off 15 to 25%. Remember, the market last year was down over 20%. So we are expecting a decline in the overall grants that are coming in from private foundations and stuff. So that's something we're going to have to try to figure out how to make up. As I mentioned before, everybody's interested. The 27% of the population is Gen Z. Gen Z is very big on corporate responsibility. They're very big on social change. They want the people that they buy products from to be good corporate citizens. So you want to try to capitalize on that corporate responsibility trend. You need to be in a situation where you can reach out to the business community and talk to them about how you can provide a real partnership. So instead of it just being a charitable contribution to your organization, it could be a two-way street, a partnership with them where, they build you into their mix, and that helps them to promote them as good corporate citizens. So again, it is something that's very big. In a poll that was done, and I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I know it was more than 50% of corporations understood that they needed to incorporate a higher level of corporate responsibility into their mix. So again, something that the nonprofit sector should be focusing in on. Look for increased ways to focus some of that passive fundraising. I know Amazon Smile used to be something that a lot of nonprofits tapped into. That's now gone. But there are ways that you can still do things that can bring in some passive income. There's something out there where you can, a bunch of different things. So one of them is to cover the fees. So when you put out a kind of a PayPal or credit card and allow people to pay, and they make a $10 donation, you're paying a fee towards that. I've seen many organizations already do this, but every organization should offer the ability for the donor to pay for the fees that you have to pay. So instead of making a $10 contribution, maybe they make a $10.43 contribution to cover your fees so that you get that $10 net as opposed to getting something less than that. Definitely set up recurring donation programs. The statistics are that less than 40% of people who give to a nonprofit organization make a second donation to that organization. But anybody who's on a recurring donation program, that goes up to over 80%. So if you can get people to not just give once, but to give almost like the gym membership where they give once a month or something like that, they're going to be much more likely to continue to donate for the long haul. And they could have the ability to grow into larger donors. Corporate donation matching. When people are making contributions, don't forget to push out for them to ask their employers if they have a match program. It's a way you can kind of leverage some of the donations being made to your organization. There are certain apps like Roundup where donors can round up their debit card purchases to make donations to your organization. So if something is $17.42, it'll deduct $18 out of their account, and the other 58 cents will come to your organization. It's a matter of numbers. The more people you got doing that, the more dollars will come into your organization. Look at ways that you can partner with your donors, as I mentioned before. The one thing to keep in mind is one size does not fit all. And a lot of people who have heard me speak have heard me say this before, but I'm not a golfer. So if you're having a golf outing and you come to me and ask for a donation, I'm going to be less likely to give, or if I give, I'm going to look for the smallest thing that I can give. But if you can come to me like Book Fairies did and say, hey, look, we want to partner with you in a more effective, meaningful, and deeper way, I'm more likely to listen if it's something I'm passionate about. So I would definitely explore local businesses, find what the local businesses are passionate about, and try to find ways to align what their passion is to your business so that you can create a two-way effective partnership. And then also think about selling merchandise on your website. A lot of organizations have now started to set up stores on their website where they're selling merchandise to the general public. Keep an eye on the chat also, guys, because every time I kind of mention something, Kelly's been throwing stuff into the chat. She threw in a book about partnerships that is a really, really strong book. It's a book that I read, which kind of got me into the feeling that this is something we should be doing. It's called Purpose Incorporated. So it's Purpose Incorporated, Turning Competitive Advantage. So something you should be looking at. Take a read of that book. It's a great book. From a social enterprise perspective, we're seeing more and more where nonprofit organizations are looking to get into some business ventures. We're seeing it a lot within the developmentally disabled world, where individuals with developmental disabilities are much, much harder to employ. And this provides not just a revenue stream for the organization, but an ability to employ individuals who have had a tough time historically gaining employment. If you're not already doing it, you need to support digital wallets. You need to be able to take funding through different digital wallet streams. So either text to donate, Google Pay, Venmo, Apple Pay, PayPal, social media. People don't write checks anymore. So if you're not giving people the opportunity to pay through a digital wallet, you're basically hamstringing yourself. You want to make it as easy for people to donate to your organization as possible. Gaming for good. Again, I've talked about this in the past, but it is something that definitely continues to gain momentum. There are more people who watch gaming than watch all of the major sports. The gaming industry is more than the TV and Hollywood combined. It is a huge, huge industry out there. And Gaming for Good is kind of one of the biggest fundraising trends out there. To put it in perspective, what it is streamers on platforms such as Twitch, they gameplay and people watch them play video games, and they give viewers the ability to donate to various nonprofits. So if you can kind of tap into some of the gamers, and there are gamers here on Long Island and in New York City and stuff, but if you can tap into some of the gamers and have them feature you as part of their gaming, that's a big plus. There's something called Jingle Jam, which is an annual 2-week-long charity event where gamers, music, and comedy, with all of the proceeds going to different charitable organizations. And in 2022, that Jingle Jam, that 2-week event, raised about $4.1 million for charity. So, it is becoming a much bigger factor, this kind of the gaming world. I mentioned already Rise in Gen Z, which are the 11 to 26-year-olds, currently 27% of the population. They're going to be your future donors, and they're different from other donors that are out there. 57% of Gen Z donors research an organization before donating. They make sure that the website is clear and user-friendly. So it's really going to be important for you to make sure that when you're kind of out there setting up platforms and trying to figure out what you're going to do, you want to go after that Gen Z population. There's going to be a tremendous level of wealth transference that takes place over the next 20 to 30 years. It's going to be the largest level of wealth transference ever to happen in this country. I think the last thing I saw was somewhere around $30 trillion. So it's a big number that's going to be transferring from the older generations down to the younger generations. And if you have your relationships right now with older individuals, it really behooves you to start looking at doing more maybe family planning. Let's not just focus on the matron and patron of the family, but figure out how do we get to know the whole family. And even if you can't get to know the whole family, from a different perspective, you can build your network of Gen Zs. Down the road, they're going to be the ones that are going to have the wealth. And if they're already connected to your organization, you'll see an uptick in donations, because as I said earlier, Gen Z is all about making a social difference. So, if you can tap in, and even if they're giving $10 a year now, as they grow up in their careers and as they have more resources, Gen Z is going to be the generation that's really going to make a difference from a social perspective. So you want to play the long game and kind of get into that Gen Z. As I said earlier, less than 40% of all donors who give first time are going to make a second donation to a nonprofit. Well, when you think about how hard it is to attract donors to begin with, losing donors through attrition is horrible. So you want to try to keep those donors coming back to you. So how do you do it? Well, you need to provide information about your impact. Donors want to see the impact that you're having. Donors want you to show them the impact that you're having. 63% of donors try to find information on social issues that the nonprofit addresses. So you want to show them what are the social issues, how are you addressing them, how are you making a difference, what are the specific projects that you're supporting, how are their funds used? Donors want to know how you utilize their funds to kind of change the world or to meet your mission. A couple things, send out personal videos, handwritten notes are great, especially for the older generation. Stories from beneficiaries of your organization, if you can. One of the things, and I'm sorry that I keep bringing up Book Fairies, but we do have a partnership with Book Fairies, so it's a kind of a partnership that I can kind of build off of and talk about. But one of the things Book Fairies does that's super effective is, they sent us videos from the kids who are getting books and showing us kids getting books and having the kids thank us. They sent us drawings, that the kids have made, thanking us for being a partner and helping them put books in their hands and stuff. It's those types of things that are super important, make a difference and keep you connected to the organization. Reach out, have phone calls with your donors, let them know how much you appreciate it. Personalize your asks. Find out what people's interests are. With a lot of the AI that's out there, you can actually go through and gain an understanding of what campaigns people have donated to and really utilize that to really hone the ask that you have to donors, and really focus on what's of interest to the donors and how can you leverage that interest for larger donations. Take a look and understand the giving capacity. You don't want to lump everybody together. If someone's been giving $10 every year and someone else has been giving $500 every year, you don't want to send out an ask, for $100. You want to kind of match the ask to people's giving capacity. Take a look at how people, or what communication tools you've used in the past that have actually gotten or motivated donors to give. A lot of this stuff is stuff, again, like I said, you can use AI to do. So is it phone calls? Is it emails? Is it direct email? And this way you can kind of focus or target your campaigns to people based upon what's been effective in the past. And not everyone can give a donation, but they can volunteer, they can attend events, they can do other things. So try to kind of focus in on what organizations can do. Try to create that donor community, find ways you can connect everybody. A couple quick things here, because I'm running out of time. You can see that independent research and word of mouth are the two biggest. People give because somebody they care about or someone they know has asked them to give. That's usually one of the biggest reasons people give. Counts for 36.5% of all donations. But then the next thing that's surprising, if you look there, social media is the next big one at 15.6. And then all of your direct campaigns are much smaller. So really, it's that widespread social media that's going to have a big impact. So make sure that you're kind of focusing effectively with respect to social media. And social media, the good thing about social media, it's a low-cost, high-impact tool. Social media has been growing at 72% of the public use at least one type of social media. You can see here some of the top benefits of social media: building a connection, attracting new donors, kind of fostering this entire community sort of thought process. And again, you have to make sure that when you're utilizing social media, you're focusing on the right platform, because there are many different platforms. I'm not going to go through it. You have a little chart here that kind of lays out some of the different platforms, who uses them, how many people are using them, what the gender is, and how much time they spend each day. Just understand that the older generation is going to be more Facebook. The younger generation is going to be more the TikTok, Instagram. Some of the tips for social media. 41% of nonprofits don't have time to dedicate time and energy to social media. One of the things you may want to think about, as I said before, Gen Z wants to help. They want to be part of the process. They don't always have the money to give, but they have the time. Social media is where they live. So think about going out there and trying to find ways that you can attract Gen Z as volunteers to help build your social media program. Set up a social media committee. It's a good way to get the younger generation involved in your organization. And these are people that maybe potentially can grow up and become other committee members or even board members. There are best times to post to each of the different social medias. We've given you here a chart that shows the best time to post to each of them according to a Hootsuite survey. And then there are posting softwares that are out there, giving you a list of them that allow you to streamline the process. You can actually set up a whole week's worth of posting or a month's worth of posting, and it'll push things out when you want them, the messaging you want at the right time and under the right platform. Be responsive. You want to get back to people. You want to have that interaction and engagement. Without that engagement, it's kind of tough to grow your network. And make sure there's fundraising and a donate here button on your social media. Track and measure results. Most of the social media platforms have the ability for businesses such as yours to track your results. Use your brand voice consistently and try to find ways to say it with fewer words. The goal is to leverage short social media posts to draw motion, inform, and call to action. We were talking to a nonprofit the other day who uses ChatGPT. She'll write up what she wants to post, and then she'll say, make this more concise. And she uses ChatGPT to kind of shrink it down. Remember, the old adage, a picture is worth 1,000 words and a video is worth 1,000 pictures. So kind of keep that in mind. Using AI in social media. Again, we're going to have a session that talks about some of this later. I only have about a minute left. ChatGPT is the fastest growing platform on the internet. It's free, but you can also have paid use. There's examples in here on prompts that you can use in order to use ChatGPT. We're seeing it used a lot within social media. We're seeing it used a lot within fundraising and everything else. There are a couple more slides on artificial intelligence overview and some cybersecurity. We have a whole session on cybersecurity later this afternoon, so I'm not really going to jump into it. I just tend to be long-winded, so I apologize. Thank you, everyone, and I appreciate you.